Well,
Hello.
good afternoon. Looks like we definitely have a quorum now. So thank you for logging in. I know that that Paula is unable to make it today. I haven't heard from anybody else. I imagine Marcia will tune in here in a second. But we'll go ahead and get started with who we have right now. So I'll go ahead and take roll. I've got Kaylee Bentz, Danny Steyer, Lyda Shogun, Greg Walsh, Matt Fogarty.
Yeah.
Thank you. Shelby.
Here.
Thank you. And Trina.
Here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very good. And with that, I'd like a motion to approve today's agenda. Oh, Lyda, I think you're trying to do it, but you're muted.
Come on, unmute. Yes, I move that we approve the agenda for today.
Okay, thank you.
I have a proposal,
Oh,
a modification. Where will we modify agenda?
we can do. We'll just do it right here. Whatever your recommendation is.
I have a recommendation that we look at the grant, talk about the grant proposal process, approval process.
Okay. We'll
And
go
also looking at how do we track the results of the grants that we've approved. Anyway, so tracking of approved grants.
Okay. So an amendment to the agenda, a discussion around grant approval process and tracking of grants. Is that correct, Danny?
Yes, that's my proposed modifications.
Okay. And with that, are there any other changes? Okay. And Lyda, does your motion
My motion's to approve the agenda for today as amended.
as amended?
It stands, yeah.
Awesome.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Greg, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh.
None. Okay. And with that, next agenda item, approval of the March 4th, 2024 steering committee minutes.
Oh, I'll move to approve the minutes of the meeting of, was it February 24th?
March 4th.
March 4th, sorry, March 4th.
And
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelby. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? None. And welcome, Marcia. And Marcia, just for background, the agenda was just amended. We're going to start off with grant approval process and grant tracking. So just talk about that process and have a discussion around it. Yeah, well then we'll get right into it. Danny, do you have specific questions that you'd like to discuss, and then we can go from there?
Well, I guess the first point is that we'd like to assume that there was some discussion prior to our last meeting about the Dixie Resources Center. And because we had just it was brought up, the proposal was brought up and approved in the same meeting. And that precedent seems to be of concern.
That is a concern.
What that was brought up and was approved in the same meeting without really complete background. And I think on my part, I assumed that it had been previously vetted and at least discussed at least one meeting prior within the steering committee. So proposing that we have a little bit more information rather than expect to get information at the one meeting and expect a vote at that meeting on
Yeah. So in my limited experience with this, that's the first time that we've done that. And that was because of the time sensitive nature of the funding request for the Dixie Fire Resource Center. To my knowledge, there isn't necessarily a proposed timeline that it has to be deliberated upon at X amount of meetings. So if that's something that you would like to do, but typically in the past, if there's been any other additional funding, it's been something that has been discussed at a meeting or two or three. Like the funding for the Rancheria occurred over, I think, 2 or 3 meetings before it was deliberate or before it was voted upon. But each case, could be relatively different. That's all.
I guess that what I'm just pointing out is it seems reflexive and really that to just quickly respond, even though we did have, they were backed into a corner and needed approval right away. But that isn't something that we believe that we should do regularly and shouldn't be a model that somebody should expect something to be proposed in one meeting and be approved in that meeting, because we had no real opportunity to gather backup information or alternatives. Of course, the alternative was for the North Valley Community Fund to pay to fund the whole thing.
Yep, that's true. Any other thoughts from the rest of the team on grant proposals and an adequate time frame to discuss them?
If I can just, I think what we have done in the past, we've had some that have had written applications for funding, and we've had back and forth conversations with the applicant for those funds. We've had modifications of those. We've had some that were, we suggested that they look for funds some other place than the DFC. So everyone that's come up has been treated differently because the needs are different, and how we approach it has been different, but it's all been kind of, as far as I understand it, very much above board, open. Anybody can listen to the conversation. There's no mystery to it. It's just because the situations are so different from one grant to the next, they just are handled differently.
Yeah, and with regard to the paperwork, some of the grants that come through that are applied through on the North Valley Community Foundation grant portal. So I think I did a little bit of a tour with that last week of kind of pointing on where there's like a PDF that can be pulled down. Typically, if there's in the future, if there's a grant request, then I would attach that PDF in the board packet so you can read about the grant proposal there.
Yeah,
in addition to what live.
Yeah, and I would agree with Danny that it kind of an awkward situation to not know that this is coming. It wasn't on the agenda, and to not have any background conversation or information on it. And I know I had to sign off early, so I didn't even know that that was going to be a discussion point for the day. And so, yeah, and it's not in our bylaws, so, there's no violation. I think it was designed to give flexibility, but but I would have liked to have asked more questions and look at alternative funding or directions with where we're going, as that part of community support is tapering to a different place
Yep. Thank you, Trina. Yes, Greg, you have a comment or question? Greg, you're muted.
I was thinking like, on the website, is there like funding guidelines, that people can just look at before they apply? I mean, this was very short notice, but I mean, here's the procedure. This is what we want. This is what we're looking for. This is, the kind of data we want. This is the kind of results we want to see. What are you promising us for the money? Right? What are we going to get? Is there something on that, like that kind of conditions on the website that people could just look at and have something there that they can build a request on that we can work with?
Short answer is yes. And then you'd, as an organization makes a grant request, they're provided the grant guidelines. And what the expectations are around the grant reporting throughout the process or the life of the grant, right? So when they receive the funding, what their expectation is on what they need to report on for their initial request and so on and so forth.
Are we getting that information for the grants that we've already given out?
Yes.
Because I'm not seeing the reporting. I mean, so I don't know.
Okay. So I'll download it all and I can send it to everybody here.
Okay.
It's through the grant portal that North Valley Community Foundation off. Yeah. So learning point here is that time is an issue, making sure that there's adequate time, and then just the ability to read up on the grants that exist, and to determine what the, for lack of a better term, return on investment has been. Yes, Matt.
I also think that we should have a conversation, maybe not today, maybe after the our summit thing, about getting clearer about what we're going to do with the 1.4 million, and how we're going to spend it, and what kind of non-profits do we kind of like, what kind of non-profits do we not like. I mean, it seems that a lot of it's been quite reactive in terms of our people coming to us rather than us having a clear strategy and being able to go out and find whatever the non-profits who are looking after kids or nature or whatever. I mean, maybe there's just a few here, and maybe we've spoken to them all, maybe, but I'm not 100% sure. And I think that it kind of talks to Greg's point a little bit about is getting clearer about the kind of things that we want to fund. I mean, my gripe has been this kind of amorphous term of what's it called, unfunded needs, unfulfilled needs or whatever.
Unmet needs.
Unmet needs.
Unmet needs, right? Which for me is still quite amorphous about what exactly that means, especially given, I mean, settlements, like multiple settlements, and now the 500K per person to rebuild the house and that kind of stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of money that's come through, and it's just not clear to me about how we're going to balance the unmet needs of a young family versus someone who used to live here versus someone who had a big house but can only a medium house versus et cetera, et cetera. Like this, I don't think it's clear at all in terms of what that means to me, and I mean, I'm relatively financial as a person anyway, so I can get whatever we're talking about, but I just haven't really understood what that means. And given that that's the thing that we're about, the rest of it is kind of like unclear as well. And so I think having a real discussion, maybe one of these meetings for like an hour or so, and just getting clearer about these are the kind of things that we're going to do with the money, and these are the kind of things we're not going to do with the money. And just get clear as a group, especially now that we've got the new team members in, that we can get some fresh ideas and thoughts about ways that we can do that. And then that can kind of feed into Greg's point about being clear about that on the website, about what we're looking for. And then kind of Danny's point about the, actually having a process that and stuff going through and having more time and better, but kind of making it more strategic rather than kind of reactive about who's coming through our door. I think it would be really valuable for us. And
if you recall,
if
you recall from the last two meetings, Matt, I posited the idea of a steering committee workshop to do specifically that. And on March 2nd, part of the time is devoted to apprising our local organizations of specifically how they can apply on the website. So what was supposed to be on March 2nd, which is now April 6th, part of that time is devoted to going through the website with our community organizations. At the end of the day, and this is on all of you, if you want to be keepers of the flame and block organizations from applying, even though they meet the eligibility requirements, that's up to you. In my mind, if somebody meets the eligibility requirements, I don't know what authority or right we have to deny them the ability to apply for a grant. And that goes back to the personal misgivings that individuals have with people that they know in a small community. I don't know if that's a place that anybody wants to be in, to say, well, I don't like this organization because of the person that's in charge of it. If they meet the eligibility requirements, they meet the eligibility requirements. And that's why they exist. In terms of the allocation of the roughly $1.4 million that is left to be allocated, I think, as determined by the, with you all, where is the best balance for the ounce on that? Meaning that, we have these different lines of effort around the functional areas, and being able to be more strategic. And that's, been an effort to try to be less reactive and more proactive, by soliciting organizations to make sure they know how to access this. So this isn't behind like closed doors or anything like that. So at the last like 30 minutes of the organizational summit will be specifically devoted to showing in the brass tacks of our local organizations, if they don't know already, how they can do that, and really just kind of doing a class to help wade through some of the bureaucracy, to your point, Matt, so that they're aware, and can make this happen. Yes, Trina, you have a comment? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, apologies if there was a mad face for a minute on my screen. I was trying to figure out where the raise my hand icon was. But I agree with this discussion. And for me, I wouldn't say it's keepers of the flame or blocking an organization because of who is or isn't there. It's creating some sort of consistency, and like reading through the bylaws, like in the bylaws right now, it's outlined that housing, well-being, and economic recovery are the three things that are in our bylaws. And so really gearing towards that. And at the same time, if an organization, nonprofit, community member applies for funding, but they do have other resources, if they're a large nonprofit, or if they've, there's a duplicative thing going on, then I think that puts us in a position that it's like it gets awkward for us. And so for me, it's more about creating a type of consistency, but also we're transitioning from immediate needs into other areas, and where is that transition line? And I think we're in it, and this conversation may feel a little messy to some. It feels messy to me, but I think it's really important that we're just honest, and that we figure out what that consistency would look like. And so going back to the bylaws, those three things are the top things. And do we refocus and encourage people to, or organizations that are applying for funds, to go there? Does the Dixie Fire Collaborative itself apply for funding and use that $1.5 million for matching grants for other funding? That's kind of where I'm coming from. Or are we just going to continue to have expenditures from $10,000 to $100,000 until that 1.5 is gone? And so, so for me, that's where I'm at as a steering committee member, and I'd like clarification from the rest of the steering committee and the community on what we as a community need, and how we can make better decisions, or through our other work support this process.
Sure. And the point that you bring up about consistency, I think that's, what I'm speaking to, is that it's, regardless of the, as the members shift on the steering committee here, year to year, that there is a baseline of what organizations can expect with regard to the eligibility requirements. Is sort of, and the point that you make about duplicative efforts, I mean, like the grant that the Mighty Summit Consortium wrote, that's an example of the fact that they may be receiving more money than we have, depending on how this thing works out with the CPUC. So being able to pump the brakes on that to realize what other dollars they're receiving from another entity makes all the sense in the world, because it sounds like they're going to find that out in the next month or so. So before we move forward on any funding there. So that's a good example of just being a little bit more measured in how we can approach with them. Another important thing to realize as you talk about matching, leveraging, the Dixie Fire Collaborative is but one organization that received money from PG&E. So even in our own community, I mean, the CSD, they're waiting on a PG&E settlement, but from their insurance and other entities, they received a lot of money. And I'm going to the next meeting to actually realize how much money that is on their statement. But like the Sierra Institute, they received $2 million. At the same time, the DFC received $3 million. And I know that they're putting some of that money towards the grant that they're working with the Forest Service on the North Fork recovery project. But that's another entity that, through partnerships, might be able to pull more money together for larger needs as identified by our community. The Chamber of Commerce got $300,000, which, they're working on maybe building a building with part of that, but that's just an example of some of the other organizations that have received the same in the same allocation of the PG&E civil prosecution that DA Hollister structured 2 years ago. It's interesting to see how we could kind of work together on that. Yes, Greg, I know you have a comment.
I was just actually, Trina brought up some of the stuff that I was going to say. I think like as we go through this process, that some of the really emergency level stuff should be like moving behind us. And I think like you brought up, Patrick, is like, what's the most bounce for ounce? What's the return on investment? And then what's the focus of the DFC? I mean, are we focused on unmet needs? Like, Matt brought up, that's really this amorphous thing. Are we going to like try to help rebuild Greenville? Or are we a social service agency? So are we duplicating efforts? There's some places where I see a duplication of effort, like what Trina brought up. So I think that it's like kind of refining the focus of the steering committee a little bit and what the DFC is in terms of, eligibility versus, beneficial results for the largest group. Like, what are we really going to, get for this? So that was it.
Well, what we could do, we could do this via Zoom, or at least some of the prep work via Zoom. Sometimes the more interactive type meetings are a little bit more effective in person. So we could do some foundational work on Zoom, and then maybe by the time we can get enough folks together within, say, April, May timeframe, maybe even into June, to actually have an in-person session where we can kind of recalibrate even what our mission statement is, and just to level set once again on the direction that we want to move for the next 12 months. So we could, allocate the time and attention necessary for that is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, that's to me.
Okay. So I'll kind of put together a couple options of how we might be able to make that work, and I'll send that out to you all via email, and then we can move out from there. Just kind of I'll come up with a rough plan that can be amended by our team here. And then, I'll throw out some dates and opportunities where we can kind of build to the last outcome that we want to see moving forward. All right. Any additional comments or questions on this particular topic?
So you said that you had all of the metrics that for the grants that we've given out, and they're somewhere they're on the North Valley website.
Yeah, I'll pull them down, and I'll send them as a PDF to you, to everyone.
Could we put those on the website? Could we put the,
I'll double check. I don't see a reason why we couldn't.
or on, you know, on the, even on the Facebook page, on both places, so that people can see what they're getting for the money, like the public, not just us, but the public?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a problem with it, Greg, and from that lens, it's just gobs of paper. So
Yeah,
it's just
no, I understand that. I understand that. Yeah.
but I'll talk to some. I'll figure it out.
All right.
I don't know exactly what the best repository is right now, but I'll figure it out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome, good.
And back to our treasurer, I mean, like the actual dollar amounts, you know, and Danny, that's something that you can continue to brief, that this grant, this was the number, this is what it went to. If a thumbnail sketch is better to actually, you know, read. You know, we published a 76-page document on the town center plan that that nobody's read. So
Was that the
but
$60,000 that was allocated for planning?
you bet.
All right.
And I still, you know, people that I would expect to have read it, they're like, oh yeah, I saw that. I just haven't gotten to it.
Did
So,
it go to, how much stuff goes out to bid? Just out of curiosity.
you know, I don't, you know, that's a good question. Like, you know, we as the DFC, we haven't really bid out anything because we haven't really been the providers other than through like the funders roundtables where some of that money in 22 and 23 came about. And at that time, it was everybody from the DFC to NVCF, North Valley Community Foundation, the Red Cross, United Way, Plymouth Bank. So when that money was allocated for those purposes, I don't know what they did for a bidding process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of nice to know who's getting paid and, you know, what the level of competition for that was, and is along with the metrics, these are the results, but how did we get here? Who got it? Why they got it? You know, I just think, you know, transparency.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
What else? All right. So moving on to DFC coordinator update. I talked about this at the community meeting on Saturday. We have a housing grant mock intake, and it's really like an informational session open to anybody that wants to come to hear more about the Recover California housing grant / home hardening grant. So a couple of weeks ago, again, we had a training here that we Zoomed from the Recover California folks. And they just gave a rundown on the basic eligibility and how to apply through the process through their portal. And so, you know, the goal of this thing on Thursday is sort of demystify that a little bit. And as people have questions, or they would need access, if they need technology access, then I can provide that for them. Also, if they need help going through the process, you can like download a hand, you know, a handwritten fillable application as well. So just that's kind of open-ended walk-ins type thing for 3 hours, 2:30 to 5:30. Recover California. And Matt, yeah, I mean, thanks for your comment right there. I see that the town center plan's on the website as well. And it's been there since November, but I'll send it out so that everybody has it. The Recover California people, they will be here. They've identified either a Wednesday, a Thursday, or a Friday, the 10th, 11th, or 12th. And they're trying to just figure out from their personnel perspective how many people they can get to come on any one of those days. So, but it will be that week, definitely. And then we'll go from there. RSF working groups, we have another meeting this Friday. Recovery support function, once again, that's sort of the FEMA recommended course of action with regard to identifying projects along 5 functional areas of economic development, infrastructure, housing and commercial buildings, natural and cultural resources, and health and social services. So those groups, again, they started in I believe, the spring of 22, and they identified 52, got down to 27. Now I think we're down to 26 projects. We had a good meeting on that last month, and it was really just kind of level setting again. A lot of the people that had been involved either have, some of them have moved on, others hadn't, and then it was a great opportunity to engage new partners on that front. So we're doing it again this Friday to focus on community profiles and spotlights. Those are two items that need to be incorporated in our overall recovery plan, which the county is still working on. Yes, Lyda, you have a question? Oh, you're muted.
Just remind us with whom you're meeting on these. I mean, I was on one of those RSF working groups, and I kind of haven't heard anything since we submitted our information. And I know
Yeah.
you've met, but with whom are you meeting at this point?
Yeah, that's part of the problem, is that there was a lot of work started up front, and then it just kind of, it got backburnered. The identification of the projects were there, but then the implementation process sort of waned. So, you know, at the last meeting, there were 40 different people
Oh, okay.
representing a variety of different organizations. Let me pull up the.
Oh, that's all right. I thought it was like people from the county. I thought it was a smaller group, but you're still
Yeah,
meeting.
no, it's okay. But I'll give you an idea. I'll give you a sample of kind of who showed up, which I thought was good because I don't know if all these people were involved from the get-go, but you know, we had so the most of the chairs were there. So if you remember from housing, it was Tracy Ferguson and Tyler Pugh. They were the co-chairs for housing. Economic development was John Stefanik and Jeff Engel, both of whom were there. Natural and cultural resources were Willow Vieira, who's the Plymouth County Ag Director, and Paul Russell, who's the museum director. Health and Social Services, that's now Nicole Reinert, who's the director at county. The previous director has moved on, and there was another individual. But then we had a lot of folks from just other organizations. So like Almanor Chamber of Commerce came, Feather River RCD, Seneca Firewise, Indian Valley Innovation Hub, Grace Bush from Greenville Rancheria, Alliance for Workforce Development came, Dixie Fire Canopy Project, North Valley Community North Valley Catholic Social Services, Environmental Health, Plymouth County Risk Management. So a number of entities identified, and Sierra Pacific SPI, they had a representative as well on Zoom. So just kind of expanding that network to help with some of these projects and get them implemented.
Great.
So that's going to continue to go until it doesn't. The last Friday of the month, and so we started. The last one in February was we ran a little bit over. We had a lot of 2.5 hours, and we went to about 2:45, almost 3 hours. And that was really kind of a kickoff to, it sounds like a kickoff because, like, to your point, Light, I mean, this is stuff that had already been discussed, but it had to kind of get the cobwebs out and remind some folks, even those that had been involved from the get-go. And then with the new partners, kind of bring them up to speed on where we are. So it was good. I mean, I think, you know, for some folks, they were intrigued to find out that there had been that much work that had happened. But then it's kind of like, well, now what? What do we do? How do we move some of these things along? So part of it is getting the overall Plymouth County recovery plan written. Which has been elusive, and that goes back to capacity. There just hasn't been, you know, a lot of that fell on Tracy's shoulders, and, you know, she's one person. So what we were kind of discussing is that, you know, a little bit of a division of labor here, and that's why we're kind of focusing on these for this next meeting, community profiles and the spotlight organizations that want to be a part of it so that we can incorporate that. And if we do have that document back to my earlier point about who's going to read it, but at least if it can be referenced, right? And there are excerpts that can be referenced. We were talking about creating a supplemental items that are a little bit more consumable for, the general public, but then also as any one of the RSF lines of effort, if they're talking about natural and cultural resources, here's a one-page rundown on specifically what those projects are and, what's the easiest sort of connecting of dots to show what the outcome that we're looking for on those projects are. So there's a lot of work still left to do, but I think it's helpful by at least having these people in the same room for a time. And the frequencies is such that, if we keep it month to month with some homework in between, I think we'll get a more collaborative product in the end. So that's a big goal of it. But we're going to meet again on Friday from 9 to 10:30 at the Mineral Building. Lesson learned from last time is we did set up a Zoom option, and I was really surprised to see how many people showed up on Zoom. We had about 16 on Zoom, and the tech part of it was pretty clunky because, it was just the microphone was just on my speaker, and nobody could see anything on Zoom. And I was trying to give a play-by-play, but it didn't work very well. So I'm going to be setting up something akin to what we have for the community meeting. Use some of that equipment to at least make it a little bit more interactive for people on Zoom. So I'll send the invite to all of you if you want to attend in person or if you want to attend on Zoom and at least get some insight into what's occurring at those meetings. Any questions on that? Okay. The park update. So once again, the National Park Service has a division known as the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. They've been working with us since end of summer, beginning of the fall on just developing a concept for an eventual park here in Greenville. They're getting closer to their final concepts. They had kind of like 3 variations, but that's going to get whittled down to 2. They're kind of taking parts and pieces from the 3 for their overall design. And it'll look like, what you often see in terms of like a landscape architect design, artist rendering of different ideas and features. And then those options will be presented. So looking to present that at the May community meeting, and then with 2 months of an opportunity for feedback through surveys. And we'll put those surveys out in a variety of ways, either electronically or just kind of paper flyers that can be sent out and put in high traffic areas so that people can fill those out and then drop them back off if that's a better way. But that's the latest and greatest on that piece. Any questions on that? Yes, Dan.
So my thing back to your comment, I think it's both, not just flyers or electronic. It's got to be incorporate both because there's some
It
of
is,
us
Danny.
that-
It is.
all right. I heard you say one kind of or the other, not necessarily both. So all right,
No,
good.
Yep, it'll be both. So we'll have an analog and an electronic. Plymouth County settlement update. So just to refresh everyone's memory, in January of 2023, so a little over a year ago, Plymouth County, this is different. So in the spring of 22, DA Hollister filed what was called a civil prosecution on behalf of Plymouth County in conjunction with other neighboring county DAs. So they filed a civil prosecution with PG&E, and that's how the county received $17.2 million from PG&E. The money that the DFC got was a portion of that $17.2 million. The money that the Rotary clubs in Plymouth County got was a portion of that 17.2. the Chambers of Commerce, 17.2, the Fire District, 17.2, Sierra Institute, 17.2. All that money came from that same DA civil prosecution. Now, the county, just like any other entity that's been able to sue PG&E as if they're just like private citizens have been able to do so and mediate out of court with a law firm to get some type of settlement. They did the same thing throughout 2022. And the county, by January of 23, was awarded $7.8 million from PG&E based off of some of their loss in the Dixie Fire. The public knowledge of that settlement came out in September of 2023. So the county had been given notification in January, and then for whatever reason, it wasn't made public until like August, September timeframe. So 7 months ago. Since October, we've had a monthly meeting with the county, specifically Deborah Lucero. She attends those meetings. Kevin Goss has attended a few. Tracy Ferguson usually chairs it. Kes Porter comes. Laura Wheeler comes. And to try to promote and advocate for how they can spend that $7.8 million. In the fall, the county produced a presentation that they briefed at the Board of Supervisors meeting with a breakdown of that money and where they intend to spend it. Of note, like 3 principal areas around here in Greenville where they own property. The county owns the property where the old town hall and fire station once stood, where the sheriff substation once stood, and where the library once stood. The monetary value for those 3 areas, they still have identified as quote unquote calculating. What the county has said is that they're still also waiting on insurance settlements for both those properties. And they're uncertain now about how much money or where they will allocate the money that they've received from their PG&E settlement and their eventual insurance money towards rebuilding those properties. So that kind of goes into the town center plan with regard to what seems to be moving along is that instead of them rebuilding exactly the library, the town hall, and the substation, well, the substation is something that the CSD is working on. The Indian Valley CSD is that they are planning on building a safety center with the money that they have plus the county's money that would house the sheriff's substation, the Indian Valley Fire Department, and the Plumas District Hospital contracted ambulance service. So that would be like, that's an example of one building that the county doesn't intend on rebuilding exactly where it was, because they have a plan in place working with IVCSD to rebuild essentially that first responder center. I think you all are at least aware of that point. Then the county are still trying to figure out what they want to do around the town hall and the library. A recommendation has been that those two buildings once provided gets incorporated into a larger community center that would have a large meeting space, a functional area space for things like town halls or meetings, and that the library could also be housed there as well to recoup that service. Right now, there's a temporary library in one of the old classrooms at Greenville High School that has had daytime hours throughout the week, and that's what they've been using over the last year for the library. But they have intentions of trying to at least have a larger space to provide a public library. The Board of Supervisors discussed it last week at the Tuesday Board of Supervisors meeting, and they at that point agreed to table the discussion at least until April. for when they think they'll have more answers on their insurance settlement information. So that's kind of what I know about that situation right now. But back to, being able to support or build out public spaces here. And those were the biggest ones on their settlement that or on their cash breakdown of what they look to recoup. Some of the other items, like those are the biggest property losses they had, those 3 buildings. Some of the money they'd like to contribute to from that $7.8 million is to take some of it and hire a long-term disaster recovery coordinator at the county. And so they're looking at allocating $450,000 from the $7.8 million for that new position at the county level. Yes, Trina, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And I may be interrupting your presentation, but so the $7.8 million essentially was for the loss of those buildings, county-owned facilities. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that was part of what they put in. They also had another. I mean, there's a number of items here. I'll give you what they have as unreimbursed expenditures, and what went into their suit against PG&E was $569,000 for roads, engineering, and administration of projects for the Public Works Department for just road maintenance on the heels of the fire. The Sheriff's Department, that was part of it was the services. Their basic utilities at the substation, so water, sewer, and utilities at the substation, as well as communications equipment. There's another one that I don't see here, but they've been talking about it, is that they are looking to potentially use part of the $7.8 million to recoup overtime wages of county employees that worked overtime during a time frame to be determined during the Dixie Fire. And that they
So
paid.
that would go back into their employee fund?
Yeah, it sounds like they paid it out either through, and this is something that I don't understand fully, either from their general fund or also money that they got from Cal OES during the fire. But at some point they need to recoup whatever they allotted for that back into where they paid it out from. They have, there was a piece of equipment. They have a $500,000 grader that they lost up in Chester that they need to replace. And that was part of their settlement. So those were the basic items. So with the 7.8, in addition to hiring a new coordinator for 3 years, they've also talked about allocating at least $2 million of it for matching grant funds. So given this has been reported in the Plymouth Sun as well, is that $7.8 million seems like a low number, comparatively speaking. And there was a lot of consternation around why it was so low. The previous county council is apparently the one that worked with a law firm from Texas to file this suit against PG&E. And to date, there hasn't really been a lot of information shared with how that was handled, why, especially when other entities, much larger or much smaller rather than the county, were able to sue PG&E and receive a larger settlement. There was this, for whatever reason, belief that the county suit would probably be in the tens of millions of dollars, not single digits. So, but part of what they intend on doing is allocating some for matching grant funds. And then they also have a line item here for $2 million in investment is what they're recommending.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. And that would be like what they actually sued for would be would lead the decision making on how they would propose to spend it in the future, with influence to the county, but also if the monies they'd gotten from Cal OES or other things offset some of those other costs, maybe that's part of why it was so low when really they should have they should have applied for the full cost. But if that goes back into the county coffer in at some level, then that does leave probably an extra amount that wasn't actually part of this lawsuit towards staffing or other things. And
Yeah.
that $2 million grant for matching funds, would that be like matching funds for the safety center, or would that be is there a specific target to how those matching funds might be used and applied for?
The only one that's come up thus far is actually Tracy Ferguson just briefed a plan to use some of this for matching funds for another home hardening grant that the county are looking at applying for. But that's the only one that I've heard of to date, and she just briefed that 2 weeks ago at the first Tuesday, the first March Tuesday Board of Supervisors meeting. And then they brought it back up again last week. And then that's why, for whatever reason, I think, again, the insurance deliberation, waiting on that, they decided to table it until April. But that's the only one that I've heard of thus far.
Okay, great. And so I have two more questions. One to that, and I am also on the Columbus County Fire Safe Council Board of Directors, and we had received 5 million of that 17 million. And
Oh.
so a lot of our efforts are around community hardening and home hardening. And I think there may be some co-applications happening there at that level, which is fantastic. So that's more of a comment than a question. But my
Yeah.
last question is with those properties, the town hall property, the library, and the sheriff's substation, are those going to potentially be rebuilt as some sort of county to provide county services? Are they looking at selling it to a nonprofit or a private entity? Do you have any direction on that yet?
Yeah, no, I wish.
Yeah, just
And
curious. Yeah.
yeah, as it relates to the actual property, I don't know that they've come to any decision. I'm not privy to whether or not they've actually come to a decision. But that's why we have this standing meeting, is to try to bring all those questions back around. Unfortunately, Deborah and Kevin have both been absent from the last at least 2-3 meetings. I think the last time either one of them was at a meeting was in December, and we really need them to be attending this meeting because at the end of the day, they're going to make the decision.
Yeah, it's really important. Thank you for bringing this up. And I just from a person who grew up in Genesee and Greenville and went to school there, like if there's an opportunity as if they can remain county facilities to provide more public benefit or public service to the community, that could be fantastic. And on the other hand, if a private entity gets it, that's really going to provide a service or economic recovery.
Sure.
That would be good too. But thank you for keeping us apprised.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the general goal here was, because back in October there was talk that this money would just be basically absorbed into the general fund. And the example here, and I don't know if it was really true, because I think once there was enough rumor and discontent around it, but it all started with new sinks and toilets in the courthouse. And there was speculation that this money was going to be used for new sinks and toilets, renovation of county buildings in Quincy. And so it was a pretty loose thread that this money, the only reason that they kind of got this money is because it was based off of their case against PG&E, right? So if anything, it should go towards fire recovery efforts. So, hiring a long-term disaster recovery coordinator, that's a good connection, right? Like, that's a person that can help leverage these dollars with a grant writing team to potentially pull in tens of millions of more dollars into the county for public services and good. But if it's just going to buy new sinks at the courthouse, there's not a big connection there. So it seems like they walked that back, and both, for what it's worth, both Kevin Goss and Jeff Engel, have been steadfast, and when this conversation comes up at supervisors meetings, that their going in plan is that this money will be used for recovery efforts in whatever shape or form that they take. And it will take an entire resolution on behalf of the Board of Supervisors to make it so. And hopefully they'll have that insurance information in April, and then they can just finally pass a resolution saying that this money is being allocated towards recovery efforts. Then it'll be getting into the details of what are we talking about with regard to fire recovery and their property, the money that they're going to spend, et cetera. Matt, you've been patiently waiting there with your avatar hand up.
Okay, so maybe you spoke about this, but just didn't hear it. But about the CRC. So we had a strategy to build like a community resilience center, and we had a grant application or a grant application for planning. I know that didn't go through, but is that off the table now, or is that one of the, or is that something that could be part of? Because we've got this safety center thing, and they seem just like so overlapping. And what's our thinking there?
That's exactly, in the absence of both Deborah and Kevin at the last meeting, that's exactly what we talked about. Is so with the CRC, the Community Resilience Center $500,000 planning grant being off the table, what opportunity is there to use quote unquote in-house money to get us to the point of reality, to recoup some of those county, like a space for some of those county services? And is this now the opportunity that the county could set aside not the whole amount for building the building, not even the whole amount for the planning, but just even looking at square footage alone, if those 3 buildings made up about 12,000 square feet, so if 2/3 of that is being used for county spaces, a library, and say a town hall setting or meeting space, is that something that the county can devote a large portion of? So if we had 2 principal funders, like the county, Plymouth County, and then Indian Valley Community Services District, who would more than likely be the long-term owner and operator of a community center, because we don't really have any other entities, and the Indian Valley Parks and Recreation Department would be part of that. But of course, it remains to be seen what direction they're going to head with their own money they received for the community center, is that could be absorbed into a more efficient use, like one building with multiple different rooms that could provide a variety of functions, even simultaneously. So that's actually what we discussed last Thursday, Matt, was what that would look like. And we made plans to make plans for like probably the first or second week of April to try to get the county, the CSD, the IVRPD, any additional sort of public stakeholders together to meet here and talk over a map and look at the parcels, the lots, and really what do we want to do and what type of building are we talking about, so that people can actually make plans with regard to funding it. Does that answer your question, Matt?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Sorry if I kind of rambled there a little bit, but it's that's a large piece of it, because there's a lot tied to that. There's those, particularly the library and the town hall, with regard to future use concepts of community spaces here in specifically Greenville, but trying to look far and wide across the valley for what the impact would that would be. And that's kind of tied to our last meeting's conversation around the resource center. When the Dixie Fire Resource Center eventually goes away, which it will, then being able to have a logical baton handoff, as if this is a relay to the next entity. I think there's going to be an opportunity to house some of that at the school, at Greenville High School, temporarily, just like the library is housed at the school temporarily. But it's getting the people kind of responsible for that to actually plan on that. And you know, there's a number of entities, whether it be the county, the school, and then the organizations themselves being able to do that. So that's the next 4 months of trying to get that done. All right, questions, comments, concerns on that item? One of the next piece here, VOAD, this is more for informational purposes. So you all are tracking on what this is. VOADs are kind of I don't know if they're a common practice, but they're a practice in regard to disaster recovery operations. Plumas County currently does not have a VOAD. So let me back up. What is a VOAD? VOAD stands for Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. So there's a national website, variety of states, local entities have a VOAD, and it's kind of like a Dixie Fire Collaborative. If a long-term recovery group like the Dixie Fire Collaborative is reactive, VOADs are a little bit more proactive. And so Marty Walters, she lives in Quincy, and she has a background in sort of establishing different groups and organizations. And one of the things that she's been trying to work on for some time is a Plumas County VOAD. And what a VOAD does is it creates an organization up front with relevant resources and capability, so that it might be fire related, but any sort of disaster, usually kind of natural disaster related, you already have kind of a list of people that you're communicating with prior to and then potentially during a disaster to get the resources and help necessary for individuals, businesses, organizations, etc. So Marty's been working with the risk management department at Plumas County on getting this established. And I've been attending the meetings when they've had them, which have all been on Zoom. And they're planning on doing a kickoff meeting at let me see here, on the 27th. So next week, Plumas County VOAD kickoff, and believe it's going to be held at the Quincy Library. And you know, right now the scope is fairly limited, just trying to get advertised participations from organizations to get on board so that it's organized. And then over the course of this year, calendar year 24, kind of moving out to really provide the structure for what it can be as just a basic, you know, topic of conversation to kind of get rallied around. Marty has introduced the topic of evacuation coordination. So just one sort of goal this year of getting the relevant stakeholders on board with what community evacuation looks like depending on the disaster, and what that can mean for both messaging and alert of an evacuation to the actual process by which large-scale evacuations take place, whether it be for flood, you know, or fire or anything in between. And then also what, you know, individuals, businesses, and organizations can do during that time. Yes, Trina, you have a question or comment?
There we go. Sorry about that. So we're trying to be respectful too, but so is this coordinated at all with the After the Fire organization? Because I know they've done extensive amount of work around this, and I know that Plumas County OES, they have a new person. They haven't been able to have a consistent person in their OES position for a while, but they do have a new position really looking at those evacuation things. And I know Marty, and she's done risk management and these types of assessments for many years professionally, and she's pretty outstanding. But just kind of wondering if there's collaboration with After the Fire and those efforts as well. I've attended their leadership summit in the past, and there's some outstanding work.
Yeah, so I don't know that she's reached out specifically to After the Fire, which that reminds me, I have to follow up with Jennifer Master. No,
Great.
Jennifer Great.
Gray Thompson.
Great
Yeah.
Thompson, yeah, she and I had been emailing and then she went out of town, so, but actually, Marty's, sort of, organizational sponsor, if you will, has been, United Way of Northern California for this. So the United Way has been helping her with the framework and the shell of a local VOED can be. And I know that that's who she's been partnering with, but I'll reach out to her and get her connected with After the Fire as well as another resource.
Yeah, just there's ways to leverage some of our work, and I really respect and admire the work that Marty's done.
Yeah, absolutely. But with a lot of this stuff, many hands make light work. So I'll bring that up to her. But yeah, so it's Marty has set out maybe not an aggressive timeline, but an opportunity throughout this year to try to get this kickstarted. So there's this meeting in March, and then every other month till the end of the year, trying to plan opportunities to have these organizations at least represented. One of the training objectives that she's discussed with folks, and I think Lori Peeney at the county OES/risk management office is going to help with like a tabletop exercise, just to kind of reinforce some of those tenets and the lateral communication and coordination that might need to happen during an evacuation. So more to follow on VOAD integration. Any questions or comments on that? All right, I just wanted to circle back around organizational summit, still working for that on April 6th. It seems like I sent out kind of the rescheduled, got positive or affirmative responses from the invited organizations. In some cases, some people won't be able to make it because of scheduling conflicts, but then also with the cancellation of the March one, some folks that weren't able to make it in March will hopefully be able to now make it in April. So still looking to make that a good event. Part of the time on that upfront, I plan on talking about a number of these things, just apprising that sort of community slice of some of the major initiatives that the DFC has been working on. And then we'll really kind of turn to workshopping opportunities for those organizations. In plain speak, it's, your organization does what do you want to do moving forward? In terms of like your mission and purpose, what obstacles or challenges have you had with resources, whether that be people, membership, governance, administration, and then also funding. Not everything comes down to money, but sometimes that could be, there could be some of our groups that are between a rock and a hard place with their own existence. And then also to see what partnerships can be developed laterally within our community, and especially as people share a little bit more insight into what they're doing. If there's common trends where this organization or that group is like, yeah, we're working on this, and someone's like, man, we're doing the same thing. So either they join forces and they can be more effective, or maybe that clears the plate for one of them. They're like, you know what, you guys got it. You're doing a great job. We don't need to pick that one up. So that's some of the workshopping that we intend to get out of the day, kind of small group discussion and opportunities to that end. So again, I've asked for a representative or two from the basic organizations. In some cases, some people, they wear a lot of hats. So there's definitely a few people coming that represent like 3 or 4 organizations, which is fine. And it's really just about sharing that information and then seeing how we can kind of move out this calendar year. And then of course, on the back end, I'm going to share with them on the front end, it's the big sort of DFC initiatives. And then on the back end, the grant application process, and just sort of demystifying that for folks so they have an opportunity to apply if it's relevant to their community program or project. So yeah, those are those items. Any questions on that? Yes, Marcia.
When we were supposed to have it in March, it was supposed to be 9 to 2:30 in the Greenville Library. Was it about the same time?
Yeah, I've got it down from 9 to 3:30 in the Greenville High School Library. Same location. Thank you. So Lida had to hop off, but and you know, I didn't make it. I didn't make that notation on the agenda, but I usually at this point have steering committee member updates. But we'll just kind of go around the horn if there are additional steering committee member updates and information you'd like to provide to the rest of the team. Danny, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay, I did send out here just today the update that I had done for the account update, because the initial mailing, and when I sent it out, I neglected some of the newer members and some other people. Sorry about that, fellow new members. But then I'm also noting that we have a lot of people hanging on there that I don't know who they are, what they're doing there, or why they're there. So the initial, well, what I got, I think I just took Sherry's mailing for the account updates, and I just used that same list. And looking at that, some of those people are no longer part of the steering committee that I'm aware of, and some people I don't know who they are. So my plan is I'm going to clean that list up, and really the only people I'm going to send it to the steering committee members and to Bill Hubbard, who is with North Valley Community Fund, because that's to keep track there. So that's the only other person other than the steering committee that I would distribute that to. So that's just kind of notification there on that.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Thank you, Danny.
Sure.
Kaylee Bentz, any news or updates?
Sorry, phone, my laptop is not functioning properly. No, I don't think I have anything other than thank you for all you're doing. It's an incredibly large undertaking you've taken on, so thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And thank you. And men's basketball tournament this weekend? Any fundraising opportunities there? Concessions, that type of thing?
We're having a concession. That's all being run by the Greenville High School team for the most part. I think I have all the slots filled for the gate and the clock and all that stuff through those guys. So yeah, we're hoping to raise money to send the team to a couple camps during the off season, maybe even a tournament in Hawaii, something that hasn't been done in quite a while. So it's going to be a good event. I think in the past, we've had between 400 and 600 people show up to this thing, 16 full teams of adult basketball players. So it should be fun and a good thing for the kids.
Yeah, and does it start on Friday? Goes to Sunday?
It's going to be from 5 to 9 on Friday, and then all day Saturday from 8 in the morning until probably won't wrap up until 9 or 10 at night. And then Sunday is, we'll start at 8, we'll be done by 6. So not a full day.
That's a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that one.
Thank you.
All right. Greg, any news and updates to share with the team?
I'm pretty complete. I want to know, confirm that the housing committee or the Almanor is meeting on Friday. Is that correct?
Yep. So the Almanor Foundation Housing Initiative, they have a meeting scheduled at the community center in Chester from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It doesn't like Sally Elleran, their executive director, she had sent out like an RSVP. I think they were just kind of planning for numbers like with regard to refreshments and then the amount of products like that they need to print off and have available. But it sounds like it's pretty open-ended. So 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the community center, which is adjacent to the ball field there, off of Highway 36 in Chester, this Friday evening.
Great.
Marcia, anything for the team?
Just, you and I were talking on Saturday about that meeting with people to talk about the town center, and I'm interested in that. So if you do have a date and a time, if you could get it to me.
You bet. I'm gonna send out kind of like one of those scheduling app things with kind of some recommended times and dates. There's potentially 6 to 10 different groups or people to incorporate. So it's just getting it scheduled to where it's feasible for everyone. But I will definitely include you, Marcia.
Thanks.
Thank you. Matt.
So the Indian Valley Yard Sale is on May the 17th, which is a Friday, and May the 18th, which is a Saturday. So put that in your calendars. News for me is so we pulled the permit on the hotel, so we're going to be starting the demo this week. So that's going to be my next big project.
Wow, well, that's great news, Matt. Congratulations. That's a big step forward. I know that that's been a long road, so
Yeah.
that's outstanding. Well, here's to you. Congratulations. Trina, any news or updates you'd like to share with the team?
No, I'm just yeah, couple and sorry, Matt, that kind of blew my mind just now. Just because congratulations. And also, could I be on that same list as that Marcia requested? And really going forward, Patrick, I support the work that you're doing. It's a lot, and the work that the people that aren't anymore on the steering committee did previous to us, and the people that Marcia, Shelby, others that have continued on, just so much gratitude for that. And Patrick, as we move along, if there's things that we can help with, let us know. And I'm trying to find my best fit, and I have a lot of things going on. I'm engaged in a lot of work statewide and locally. So I do have a lot of connections, and I'm stretched really thin. So trying to find my best fit is really important to me. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you. And again, like especially if it's there's definitely like an orientation period for everybody that it takes some time to get fully apprised of the different issues and projects and programs and all the things that are going on. And that's why sometimes I'm repetitive, but I feel like if I keep mentioning them, some of it will start to stick, because I know it took me a good couple months for even the acronyms to start to make sense, with this big soup of groups and organizations and people. So absolutely. And I think as we continue to, all work together, there will be some things that will come up to the surface for you of where you feel like your greatest impact will be made and things like that. So thank you, Trina. And last but most certainly not least, Mr. Shelby.
Yeah, I just want to echo the same sentiments about all the work that you're doing, Patrick. It's a lot trying to wrangle all this stuff together and connect all the dots. So thank you for all that you're doing. An update, Roundhouse Council is coming along. And so we sort of have a save the date plan for June 20th. And we intend to have like a ribbon cutting celebration for the center on that date. And so it's still kind of tentative, but I think that's what we've nailed down. And so anyone is welcome to come join us. We're planning to have a pretty good celebration. And so yeah, that's the only update I have for right now.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's much like Matt's. That's a great update. That's progress. If it's any consolation for you, Jonathan Cuso came to the community meeting the other day and made this. He gave the same date, so at least you guys are aligned there. At
I'm
least
glad,
everybody's tracking June 20th.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so no confusion there. Well, that's great to hear, and that'll be a big moment for the community. All right. Any
Patrick,
additional?
one more real quick. I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on this.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
Somebody sent a message direct to me and I don't know, it popped up for a second. I can't answer on my phone. I'm sorry. I don't know how to use this thing, but it did spark me. I do need to mention this. We got our ABC license over here at Riley's. And so we have beer on tap, which is kind of, cool. It's a fun thing during the day. I think we'll get people in on during the days, but more so I did that so that we could host some events like we've done in the past with the rib cook-offs and that kind of thing. So there's talk about potentially being a bi-weekly or monthly trivia night out here. Couple, just fun things. And I can have alcohol involved. Not that it's necessary, but it never hurts for the most part. So anyway, it's an update I should have mentioned earlier, but failed to.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, Kaylee, and just kind of these little bits and pieces that continue to come online. I think these are good telltales for other interested parties, whether it be business owners or anybody else, of what is in the realm of possible and what's realistic to kind of move forward with their own goals and their own projects. So, testing the waters in that regard, and kind of expanding your business, that might help others as they're weighing their decisions and what they want to do. So, no, it's good news. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, probably no harm in wrapping up a little bit earlier this go round. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 1st. Now that's being considered a holiday because of when Easter Sunday is March 31st. So April 1st is not a religious holiday, but being called Easter Monday because of the observance of the holiday. We can continue on with the meeting, just keep our schedule going. Or if we want to move that at all, I'm open to thoughts, ideas, suggestions around it. I don't know what other people's work schedules look like. If you have the day off and you want to keep it a day off or whatever, I'm agnostic when it comes to when we hold this meeting. I'm not agnostic religiously, but as it relates to the meeting.
I work most days. I don't really take days off that much, but Kaylee and Joseph, I think both of you have kids that may be on break, and so I'm open to consideration. Otherwise, I'm open to just meeting.
That's a travel day for me. So I'm not going to be fixed. So it's probably not a good day for me.
Okay. And I know, I believe Paula will have that day off as part of her job at PRS. We could just move it a day to the right. If that's what, do we want to do it on the 2nd? Would that be more accommodating for everyone?
That works
Yeah.
for me if
Yeah.
people don't change it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that'll be fine. We'll do it same time, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. But we'll just move it one day to the right. The April 2nd, Tuesday, April 2nd. So a little non-standard for us, but that way our next April meeting, we'll kind of be able to keep with that and not kind of crunch things too much in between meetings and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay, well, I'll get that word out today after this, and then we'll just go from there. So next meeting, April 2nd, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday. Got it. All right. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I move to adjourn.
I
Gina?
second the one.
Danny?
Right.
All in
Second.
favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? None.
I
Okay.
already left.
Well, thank you all very much for your time this afternoon, and we'll be in touch.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Patrick.
guys.
Thank you.
Good job.
Bye.
Bye.